colleagues, our distinguished speakers, and invited guests. I would like to preface my introductory remarks by recalling our discussions in Port Vila, Vanuatu in November 2009. The key resolutions we set for ourselves at that meeting was to firstly devise a corporate strategic plan that reflected our primary objectives as stated in our constitution. Just to remind you what these objectives are. Firstly, fostering close ties amongst our organizations throughout the Pacific, and I think we're already amply demonstrating that. Increasing our capacity to provide sound organizational and financial management through the sharing of information, experiences, management practices, and by capacity building through staff training, attachments, exchanges, and any other worthwhile activity. The other objective is contributing to a sound economic climate in our Pacific region to enable member organizations to effectively discharge their obligations to members and contributors and to contribute to the development of our nations to the fullest extent possible. Then there's, and then the second resolution was we asked for more involvement by the International Social Security Association, or ISA, within the Pacific region. Given a lot of their conferences and workshops in the past were often held far away from our island countries. And on this note, I'm once again honored on behalf of member delegates to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Errol Frank Stuve, the president of ISA, for accepting our invitation to be a speaker at this year's conference. We also asked for a review of our forum constitution. We wanted to collaborate more in terms of investment and infrastructure development within our region. We also asked to focus on enhancing CEO skills in areas of investment and technology. And we asked for a way to improve our IT systems to enhance service delivery. As the host of this year's forum and the incumbent chair, we endeavored to implement these resolutions by the following actions. Firstly, we created open communication on a regular basis between member delegates by way of monthly email circulars and the establishment of a website, www.ppfssf.com. And I'm sure most of you have had a hit on this website and seen what we've done. The website is also being used to store information on presentations and discussions of past forum meetings as a means of tracking our progress, especially in areas where we have made decisions to take certain action for our collective benefit. We also encourage visits between member organizations to share ideas and experiences. And as our Prime Minister this morning said, we had a team from Fiji NPF who sent a delegation to PNG to review our operational reforms in areas of IT, client services, marketing, and the legislative changes that we went through. Now it would be interesting to hear from our colleague Taito on the current progress of those reforms when he gives his presentation. We had Solomon Islands NPF send its investment manager, my good friend Mike Wate, to review our property and facilities management arrangements. Vanuatu also sent a delegation, and colleague CEO Aniva and a board member came to PNG to have a look at what we're doing and collecting information on portfolio diversification and housing developments for contributors. Last year in August, we initiated participation in the Pacific Island Investment Summit, which was held in Sydney. This was attended by delegates from Solomon's and colleague Tony Macabo, again Mike, and we had our friends from Fiji as well as ourselves at that investment summit. And we had the Cook Islands seeking external advice on enhancing its IT capacities. In areas of cross-investments, we already have the funds of Solomon Islands in Fiji and NASFUND involved in joint venture hotel developments in Honiara and Suva, respectively. Similarly, Solomon Islands NPF has an equity investment in BSP, PNG's largest bank, with a presence throughout the Pacific in Solomon Islands, Niue, and Fiji. Whilst this may sound like we have ticked off a number of boxes, there is still much we can do and we should do as a regional organization. And on this note, I would like to point out that 2 years for any host country to carry out the Secretariat functions on a voluntary basis can be a difficult challenge. Unless you are doing it on a full-time basis, competing priorities will always take precedence over forum activities. On a macro level, however, as an economic group, by virtue of the size of our balance sheets, our CEO Forum is a formidable agent of positive change for the well-being of not only our members, who trust us with their hard-earned savings, but the communities in which we live and operate in. In the past, we have talked about linking with similar regional groups to drive the objectives of our forum. Colleagues, the time for us to do it is now. To put things into perspective, so far this year, the following Pacific Island groups have met and discussed matters of common mutuality. We've had the Pacific Island Joint Trade and Fisheries Ministerial Meeting, which was held in Port Moresby some time ago at the Crown Plaza Hotel. We've had the Pacific ACP Trade Meeting to discuss strengthening our region's economies through trade and economic integration. We've had the Pacific Business Mentoring Program, which is sponsored by the New Zealand government, which provides free business advice to small to medium business enterprises. The South Pacific Community Journalists met recently in Nuku'alofa, Tonga, and they were discussing ways in which they could inform our people throughout the Pacific on how to lead long and healthy lives. Additionally, the Pacific Islands Trade and Investment Commission is now the leading trade and investment facilitation organization in the Pacific Islands region, with a specific focus on export facilitation, investment, and tourism promotion. The Pacific Island Forum, based in Suva, Fiji, as the political umbrella body of our respective island states, recently celebrated its 40th anniversary. They are now driving the Pacific Plan, which essentially aims to improve the lives of our citizens across the Pacific. We do not need to reinvent the wheel and work in isolation, especially when, as mobilizers of large domestic capital, we are major players in underpinning the growth and development of our respective countries. The funds we manage are channeled back into the economy through the banking system, used for infrastructure development through government bonds or direct lending. Jobs are created when we invest in viable businesses. Colleagues, we can add another dimension, for example, to the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat, and work alongside them to drive our own objectives, which are already aligned with the Pacific Plan. Against this backdrop, with the growing interaction of these regional groups, the theme of this year's forum, Lifting Fund Performance to Build a Stronger Pacific Community, was not a difficult choice to make. We also wanted to share the success story of the Papua New Guinea supernation reforms, which is now a well-documented case study of how political will and industry and community embracement can make a difference in improving governance, service delivery, and return to members. Colleagues, for those of you who have attended previous meetings, you will note the structure of this conference is different this year. In addition to country papers, we have invited a panel of distinguished speakers to present on various subjects of topical interest we believe are relevant to our theme. Importantly, it is how their involvement with us here in PNG has contributed to the success we have enjoyed in recent years. You will recall in my email circulars that I have always reminded ourselves that we must always get optimum value in our interaction with each other. Not only getting value, but getting things done in a timely and cost-effective manner. As Pacific Islanders, we know too often of the NATO syndrome, and that is no action, talk only. We must ensure that when we decide to do something, we must implement or back our decisions with action. In other words, let's walk the talk. I make special mention once again of the International Social Security Association interest in the Pacific, demonstrated by the presence of the President himself, Mr. Stuve. Sir, we look forward to your presentation, and importantly, how ISA can assist our forum achieve the objectives and outcomes that we want. Just before I conclude, as the current chairman, I would like to encourage those countries and organizations in our line of business to join the Pacific Provident Fund and Social Security Forum. In Papua New Guinea, aside from NASFUND and Number One Super, who are already members, we have 3 other licensed superannuation and retirement funds. I note the Marshall Islands, Nauru, Niue, Palau, and the Federated States of Micronesia have not been engaged since the inception of this forum. To grow our membership, we need to contact similar organizations in these island countries, and this is a challenge that I put to the next host to take on board. In conclusion, I trust the next few days are of value to you, and I sincerely hope you continue to enjoy our hospitality and the beauty of our country that is Papua New Guinea. Thank you.